Good evening. This is Jack from Charting the Markets, and this is the Bigger Picture webinar for the evening of Sunday, the 7th of June. My disclaimer: I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some of what I'm doing and learn from it, transfer it to your own charts, and I'm not here to shoot trading signals. This is a video for paying subscribers at CTM The Bigger Picture.substack.com. It's published on YouTube after a delay of a week. All right, great. Let's have a look at ES first. Now, obviously, we had a pretty brisk day down on Friday. At one stage, I think the Nasdaq was down 5%, which is pretty impressive, and the first time I was told in a year. So that was pretty impressive. But you can see where it came down to was also pretty interesting. Now, this isn't looking quite the same on SPX, but you can see we came down to this big support level, or as these support levels are sometimes known, head and shoulder necklines. And this is a very obvious place to see a bounce from. Now, I'm thinking we might retest this in RTH tomorrow morning, and that could give us a 60-minute buy signal. And then I'm wondering if we're going to form a right shoulder. We will see how that goes. In terms of NQ, we basically also made it down to a head and shoulder neckline. So really, I'm finding that rather interesting. On RTY, here we had a possible flag forming. We broke down from that, not really seeing anything else, and we're still some way short of the obvious neckline, which would be in about the 2730 area. On YM, reached a potential neckline, but I've got another better one a little below, just under the monthly pivot at 50,434. DAX still looks like a flag forming, actually. Well, at least it doesn't really look like anything else. Waiting to see. ESTX still very much looks like a flag forming. Nikkei got a little head and shoulders here. It broke down. It hasn't quite made target here. I think there's kind of a theme developing here where we see a lower low in the morning tomorrow, and then hopefully a rally. Now, tomorrow actually leans bullish. Tuesday and Wednesday lean bearish, and Thursday and Friday lean bullish. So I'm wondering if we could put in a right shoulder tomorrow, then potentially we could have another 2 hard days down, which, to be honest, the market kind of needs. It's been a while since we had a decent retracement. All right, let's have a look at the bigger picture charts. Okay, SPX. Now, daily charts, we had a whole load of daily RSI 5 sell signals, which had fixed, and on ES, the RSI 5 sell signal made target, and we had on SPX, again, made target. On Qs, made target. Didn't make target on Dire. And I think looks slightly different on IWM, but we've still got a weak RSI 5 sell signal here. But what's new is we've now got a whole load of daily RSI 14 sell signals fixed. Sorry, I've got the wrong marking on that one, so I'll just change that quickly. So it's an daily RSI 14 sell signal is now fixed. Those were brewing almost across the board, and that is now fixed on ES, it's fixed on SPX, it's fixed on the Qs, and it's also fixed on Dire, although I forgot to put the, sorry, I've just been a bit behind this weekend, so I forgot to put the little arrow in there. And we still obviously got a weak RSI 5 sell signal fixed. I am still thinking there's more downside coming. It could be that we will go straight up from here and retest the highs and maybe fail some of these, but I think my feeling is we've probably got more downside coming soon. In terms of the shorter term, on the hourly chart, the RSI 14 sell signal made target, and here you can see we're not quite down to the head and shoulder neckline. I'd like to see this go a little lower in RTH tomorrow and see whether we get a bounce off this level, which I've got in the 7333 area. We shall see how that goes. In terms of the 15-minute chart, we've got a bit of positive divergence on RSI 14. We've got an RSI 5 buy signal fixed, and you can see, obviously, we got pretty close to the neckline. We could see a right shoulder bounce from here, but ideally we'd sit a bit lower and then sit. And we are seeing some indications on other indices that we might see that too. On Qs, again, a bit lower would be good. Sell signal RSI 60-minute sell signal made target, so that's crossed off now. We've got positive divergence on the RSI 14, and we've got another RSI 5 buy signal fixed. In terms of Dire, Dire, we've got this nice rising wedge here, and we've got an obvious target back at the wedge support, which would be a bit under the monthly pivot, so in about the 405 area, I think. In terms of the hourly chart, we had an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and we still do. That hasn't reached target yet. This was very much the strongest this week. I think it was the only one of these four where the weekly pivot actually went up this week. Qs and SPX definitely went down. No current divergence on the 15-minute chart, but they've got a nice close look at the rising wedge here, and I'm liking a move down. We got a couple of possible head and shoulder necklines. It's already reached one of them. All right, let's have a look at the IWM chart. And looking at the daily chart, hang on. All right, looking at the daily chart, we've now got, we already had an RSI 14 sell signal that had fixed, and we didn't quite get an RSI 5 sell signal fixed, although if we had, it would have already pretty much made target. We managed to break down below the daily middle band. This has been stronger than SPX already, but we're not close to the possible head and shoulder neckline. So it would be a bit of a stretch to think that one of those would be forming. In terms of the hourly sell signal, we had an early RSI 14. We had those across the board. That's made target. We've got a little rising wedge from the late March low, and that has broken down slightly. On the 15-minute charts, we've got a possible RSI 14 buy signal brewing and a possible RSI 5 buy signal brewing. So we've got some nice positive divergence, and I'm thinking ideally this would go a little lower tomorrow morning, and then we would see a bounce which should either get us back to the right shoulder, which would be my favorite option, and then at least a retest of Friday's lows and tomorrow morning's lows if we go lower, or we would go back in and start seeing retests of the high. In terms of DAX, testing the daily middle band, that's a pretty decent looking support level. I'm wondering about a bounce. On Nikkei, we've got nice little breakdown from this high here. I've got a nice looking little trend line here from the late March low, and wondering about a move down into first daily middle band and then maybe this rising support. No current divergence. If we are going to see some negative divergence on the daily here, we would need to see a retest of the high first. All right, great. Let's have a look at DX. Okay, DX, we had a strong move up. That's not unexpected. I was talking about seeing a move up here. Now, I wasn't seeing oil didn't do what I expected it to do last week, but DX did what I would have expected it to do if oil had done what I was expecting it to do, which was to go up. But we're seeing a decent, powerful move up on DX, and I'm thinking that likely has more space to the upside. Looking at the currency pairs, USD, we had what looked like a flag, and that has broken down, made lower lows. In terms of GBP USD, didn't really have a good read on what was happening there. USD JPY, we pulled back slightly here, and then we're getting pretty close to, and I think we've reached the first of the IHS targets, double bottom targets, but ideally we would get up to the full retest of this high here in the 160.75 area. But we are getting interruptions from the Japanese government. They've spent 78 billion defending the yen this year. And obviously, unlike most of the currency pairs, because this is reversed and it's USD JPY rather than JPY USD, when this is going up, the yen is getting weaker. And they've been pouring all that money into stopping the yen getting weaker, which they've had at least some success. This big move down, other moves down, this move down. This is all Bank of Japan intervening. USD CAD, obviously we made the IHS target a while ago. I'm watching this rising megaphone, which I'd drawn in, and then we reached the trend line, and then we'd holding it. I'm wondering about a bit of a pullback here. Australian dollar, we'd been forming a large head and shoulders, and that's broken down with a target in the 68.75 area. NZUSD, we were forming a possible little top, and that's broken down with a target in the 56.300 area. So waiting to see if those deliver those targets. All right, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. Okay, looking at US dollar, obviously bigger picture, big bull flag, possible target up in the 114.79 area. But in the shorter term, obviously it's mainly about what happens with, wrong chart, that one. Okay, what happens with this double bottom here? Now, We saw a deep retrace there, and I was saying there was a possibility this was just failing, we were resuming the downtrend, but my preferred option was that we would come back up to this 164, make a higher high, and then basically we'd have a pretty good chance at moving up towards the double bottom target in the 104.572 to 105.239 range. Once we got there, we could consider whether or not it was likely to go higher. In terms of the short term, we had a double bottom that broke up. It's kind of oversized, but the target again would be 164. We also had a sell signal that fixed on the daily RSI 5, and that failed, which was interesting. But obviously fits with the overall scenario. USD, obviously we got a big bear flag there, supporting the big bull flag on US dollar. GBP USD as well. Nothing really to see on the daily chart. We had an RSI 5 buy signal, which has now failed, and obviously we've got a double top which is broken down here, which may be heading down and resuming this downtrend. In terms of GBP USD, we've got a double top there too. That hasn't broken down yet, and we haven't broken down below the wedge support, which I've got in the 1.31 area. So watching to see if that happens next. USD JPY, big target on the upside. Bank of Japan permitting, is a retest of 162. Which I suspect would already have been made if it wasn't for the fact that the Bank of Japan keeps very expensively intervening. In terms of the daily chart on USD JPY, no current divergence. Weak RSI 14 sell signal, reached the possible near miss target, and may be just heading back to the 70 area. No divergence on the RSI 5. USD CAD, bigger picture. I'm thinking if we see a decent move up on the dollar, we may well see a retest of this high here at 1.4793. Nothing on the daily chart to speak of. We got a weak RSI 5 sell signal fixed, which hasn't delivered anything and hasn't quite failed yet. In terms of Australian dollar, we've got obviously a nice looking little head and shoulders trying to break down. Bigger picture, we've obviously got some decent scope to the downside. We've got, this is the little head and shoulders which is breaking down. This is a much larger double top, or possibly larger head and shoulders which is forming. We've got a lot of scope for the downside on here. In terms of NZUSD, we broke up from this this triangle, but I think this might be a bearish overthrow before this breaks down. We shall see. Nothing really to speak of on the daily chart. All right, let's have a look at bonds. Okay, bonds. We've got. We were forming some patterns last week. We were forming a double top on ZB, and that's now broken down with a target in the 110.07 to 110.16 range. We were also forming a head and shoulders on ZN, and that's broken down with a target in the 108.19 area. I'm thinking we might see a rally in the short term. We've got a possible 6-minute buy signal brewing on ZB. We've got a 6-minute buy signal fixed on ZN, so I'm thinking we might see a bit of a relief rally. But after that, really, I'm expecting this to go back, take out the previous lows, and very possibly continue further down. All right, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture. And on TYX, no current divergence, but we've seen a bit of a pullback on yields, so bonds have been going up, and I'm thinking we may well just go back and resume the uptrend. In terms of TNX, triangle broken up slightly, pulled back, and I'm thinking resume the uptrend, and the triangle would have a minimum target at a retest this high here at 49.97. In terms of the daily chart, not a lot to see nothing to see in terms of signals here. In terms of the hourly chart, not really seeing anything either. We've got a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing, but that could just get run over on the way back up. We shall see. Bigger picture on both of those. We've got big and possible inverted head and shoulders about this, and I really must get a post out about that. But this is starting to break up from an inverted head and shoulders. Obviously, it's a very ambitious target, and basically what we're looking at here is a pattern for a bonds crisis, which we could see. And there's plenty of reason to see one, but we haven't seen one yet, and it may be that we're going to, that bullet will be dodged here. But at the moment, this is starting to break up, and TNX obviously is heading back towards that neckline at the moment, and when it retests this high here at 49.97, which I am expecting, then at that stage, this one will be breaking up as well. Looking at the 5-year yields, again, we've got another triangle. It has broken up. In terms of TLC, we've got another triangle. This one would need to break down, obviously, when TLT goes down, the others go up. We haven't actually broken triangle support yet, so waiting to see if we get that. In terms of the daily chart there, no current divergence. All signals played out or failed, and nothing on the hourly chart either. But I do have possible little head and shoulders here, which I'm keeping an eye on. All right, great. Let's have a look at oils. Now, oils didn't behave this week, and we actually had an IHS which broke up on Brent, which is coil, of course, on CL, which is WTIC, and heating oil. Of those, we had the inverted head and shoulders on CL fail on Friday. And we had the inverted head and shoulders on Brent failed on Friday, and CL also failed on Friday. That means we don't have head and shoulder targets to the upside. Doesn't mean they can't go up, but normally, I have to say, after a head and shoulders breaks down, I'd be thinking we might well see a retest of the prior low, which had been about the 86 area or 86 and a small amount of change on CL, and which would be in the 90 area almost exactly on Brent. So I'm thinking we might do that. Having said that, the war has been having a good weekend. The Israelis attacked Beirut. The Iranians lobbed missiles at the Israelis, and the Israelis have been attacking Iranian infrastructure. Now, I have to say, at this stage, this is the Iranians threatened that if this happened, although they might have meant including the Americans, but I think they're seeing basically the Americans and the Israelis as essentially one force here. Then they were going to attack energy facilities in the rest of the Persian Gulf. That could actually do a huge amount of serious long-term damage, and it could see oil spike to the moon. I think there's a pretty good chance we're going to see an oil crisis with very high oil prices this summer, regardless of what happens. But certainly, that would likely hurry it along. It would also cause a lot of serious economic damage. So I'm not actually hoping that happens, but I am thinking there's a significant risk it will. And certainly, the Iranians are taking the view, I think, that large amounts of economic pain caused to the developed economies would have everyone treading very warily around Iran in the future, and actually they're probably not wrong about that. All right, looking at CL. Looking at heating oil. This one, the IHS hasn't actually failed yet, so I've still got it in the target, and I haven't marked that in as failed because it hasn't. No current divergence either. RBOB, we've got a 60-minute buy signal, which fixed and has made target. And on NG, we've got a fairly strong retracement here, and I'm wondering whether we're heading back towards this trend line here in the 3.02 area. All right, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. And all right, just looking at. Okay, this was when we had all the stuff initially about the talks. It went up to the chances of straightforward moves traffic returning to normal by the end of June. Now, obviously, as time passes, when we get closer to the end of June, this affects this. But we got up to 59, and then we were down in the mid-20s last week, and over the weekend, we've made it all the way back down to 10. Although, what I would say is this is the straightforward moves by being opened by the end of July, which is increasingly going to be the one I'm looking at. When the talks were happening and Trump was saying, oh, we're a day away and we're almost there and pretty much everything's agreed, that got up to 73%. That's now down at 29%. So optimism isn't high. You can see looking at the chart of what's going through the straightforward moves that very little is going through straightforward moves. It has effectively been, apart from a small amount of traffic, it's effectively been closed now since the end of February. All right, looking at the various ones here. Brent, we've still got an open flag target here at 134.91. A pretty good shot, I think. Getting back to the all-time high at 147.50. In terms of the weekly chart, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fix, which I'm not taking a lot of notice on, but it's always been worth being aware of these things. We had an RSI 14 sell signal on the daily chart, and that has reached the possible near-miss target. We'll see how that goes. All right, WTIC. On the monthly chart, got a flag target back up at 126.42, and I've got an older target back up at a retest of the all-time high at 147.27. I think there's got a pretty good chance of making that too. In terms of the weekly chart, no current divergence. In terms of the daily chart, we've got No current divergence, kind of looks like a bull flag triangle forming, but I am wondering, I was thinking that we didn't make it back to triangle support in the last swing down, and we might need a retest of this 86.35 to get us back to that. So that would be a fit with the failures of the inverted head and shoulders. So the chances of that happening have gone up. In terms of the W-tick triangle here, I've got a rough triangle marked in. Doesn't necessarily have to come back and retest the low, but this is only a two-touch trend line, and I'd be moving it. But basically, I'm seeing this all as a bullish consolidation, and we broke up from the IHS, and that IHS has failed, which is disappointing and frankly pretty surprising. But we are trading in a range until we start seeing genuine shortages of oil, and we haven't seen those yet. We've just been mopping up above ground stocks. Heating oil has already made a new all-time high. We've got no remaining targets to the upside. On the weekly chart, no current divergence. On the daily chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and that hasn't quite reached the possible near miss target yet. Wondering if it might go a little lower to make that. In terms of the gas oil chart, we've still got a target above at a retest of this high here at 412. Weekly chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fix and an RSI 5 sell signal that's, well, pretty much reached the possible near miss target now. In terms of the daily chart, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal that's reached the possible near miss target. And interestingly, we had an RSI 5 buy signal fix last week with a little lower bottom that hasn't broken up yet. Watching that with great interest. In terms of natural gas, bigger picture, I think this IHS failed, and well, I mean, I was reading this as a double bottom, but I think we're very possibly failing back into the lows here. In terms of the charts here, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fix, but it's fairly old. It fixed at these main highs here. Hasn't made target yet, but I wouldn't respect that in the way that I would respect an RSI 5 sell signal. In terms of the weekly chart, no current divergence. In terms of the daily chart, we've got an RSI 5 sell signal which fixed on Friday, and I am wondering about another test of the support trend line and a further breakdown from it. So we will see. If we are going to see that, this would be a great place to see that, because we just saw a double test of the 200 DMA, which is a pretty big deal on natural gas and would be an obvious place to fail. So we shall see. All right, great. Let's have a look at metals. There's a moment. All right, GC. All right, GC, I was saying that we might see, if we were seeing this starting to respond as a flight to safety, we might see a rally, and I was wondering about a possible IHS, which looks as though it might be forming. We have extended lower here, and there's a target for extending lower, and that is a retest this low here in the 4160 area. That would seem the obvious next target. Silver also extended lower. Again, I'm wondering about a retest this low here in the 6150 area. It's a little bit of positive divergence here, but nothing much to speak of. In terms of palladium, we extended lower. So I've got bigger picture on the bigger picture charts. I've drawn in a couple of potential targets, so I'll look at those there. But again, on platinum, we extended lower. This is saying to me that we are doing the full retest options in all probability on GC and SI. On HG, we've got a nice looking double top. It didn't quite make it on the future, but actually it did make it on the spot. So I've got a nice looking double top here. It doesn't need a high retest. And at the moment, it doesn't look as though it's going to get one, although we haven't broken this rising support here, which I've got in about the 6.21 area. All right, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. And okay, gold, obviously on the bigger picture, we have a beautiful bull flag channel. It's not quite perfect. I'd have preferred it to be slightly these two touches being a bit further apart, but nonetheless, it's a very nice channel and is likely a bull flag. If we come back and retest the low, which we're now getting closer to doing, and I'm thinking that we might well be doing next, that would set up potentially a very nice looking double bottom. All right, looking at silver. Silver, I'm wondering about a retest this low here at 60.94. We are trying a test of the 200 DMA, which is something we didn't break at the last low. Waiting to see, but I've seen silver go not recently, but I've seen silver go below the daily middle band pretty regularly in the past. We'll see what happens here. In terms of gold, let's look at where that is. Have I got 150 on here? Yeah, that's the green one. Yes, 150 tends to be very important on gold. You can see we're holding it here and we're below it now. So this would seem a very obvious time for a retest. All right, in terms of palladium, we had a very nice looking IHS, and that's now failed last week. So I was looking for the support at the IHS low above it at 13.29. We went through it. So I've drawn in what looks a pretty decent looking falling wedge, and this would be the obvious support trend line. It's not far below. I've got that in about the 12.10 area or 12.05. So I'm wondering about that. I don't really have any obvious alternatives to that. So if we go below, that might be a bullish underthrow. All right, looking at platinum. I'm again looking at a wedge. I've again drawn in the obvious option, and that's got support in about the 1700 area. No positive divergence on the daily chart on either. In terms of copper, you can see this second high was higher here. So we've got a potential double top here, and this is now a large nested double top setup. We'll see how that goes, but I think that's got a pretty good chance of doing some serious damage to copper price over the summer. In terms of GDX, RSI 5 sell signal made target, RSI 14s. I'm not taking those as seriously, but having had a look at these, all of these RSI 14 sell signals here actually made target, apart from this one, which failed, which was only a weak signal to start off with. That could be heading off to target, but I'm a little doubtful. In terms of GDX here, I was wondering about a possible retest to low, and we've had a retest to low pretty much, or at least we're very slightly short of it. In terms of GDXJ, on the daily chart, again, I was thinking in terms of possible retest to the low, and we've gone and got it. We have got some targets below this, but I'm not taking those particularly seriously. But obviously, if we see gold and silver go down further, then chances are these are going to go down further as well. So we'll see. All right, great. Let's have a look at the other commodities. Okay, KC has extended lower. And I think this was an inflection point, and this could have bottomed and give us a decent rally here, and it didn't. Chances are it's going to continue down, no current positive divergence. In terms of sugar, we had a nice triangle here, and it broke down. I'm kind of expecting, it's not a firm target, but I'm kind of expecting to see a retest of this low in the 1340 area, and I think likely we will see that. CC, we are heading down towards this low, and we've still got an open head and shoulder target in the 35.19 area. In terms of lumber, nice rally here. This makes more sense if you have a look at the daily chart. So I'll table that till we get to that. On CT, we got a weak 60-minute buy signal fixed, and we've seen a very steep retracement. Now, there is something to say here. I was looking at an analyst this weekend, and apparently urea production has been considerably increased from other fields, including the US. And for that reason, while urea had more than doubled to start off with, it's actually given quite a lot of that back. That may be why we're seeing cotton, wheat and corn and soy underperform my expectations here. Because I was thinking if fertilizer prices stayed high, then that was going to be an issue. It appears that workarounds have been found. So it may be that we're not going to have a serious crisis there. So we'll see. In the meantime, obviously cotton's come down quite a bit. We've got a weak 60-minute buy signal fixed. Wheat's come down a lot, and we've got a 60-minute buy signal fixed. And we've seen a very steep decline, which at least needs a retracement soon, I think. Corn, we've also got a 60-minute buy signal fixed. Soy, we've got a possible 60-minute buy signal brewing. I'm wondering about rallies on all of these, and we have pulled back a lot on all of these already. All right, ZL, we're seeing a bit of a retracement here from the 2026 highs. Could be a flag forming. If so, might need an ABC. We'll see how that goes. Live cattle, we had a head and shoulders breakdown, and it's failed on Friday. So normally at this stage, I'd be expecting to see a retest of the high. And on HE, possible bottoming action. We've gone through a couple of potential patterns, and a 60-minute buy signal fixed a while ago, which hasn't really been delivering anything. So we will see how this goes. But yeah, we'll see. All right, great. Let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. Okay, coffee. Coffee on the bigger picture, I think we are resuming the downtrend, and I've drawn in a resistance trend line here, which is currently at about the 270 area, and I'll be looking for a support trend line, but there's not a really obvious candidate at the moment. On the daily chart, no current divergence. All right, sugar. Sugar's got a big target down at 9, but in the short term, we've got a nice bullish-looking falling wedge, albeit it hasn't actually broken up yet. And I think we could well be bottoming out for a decent rally. Could we use a retest of this low before we do that? Yes, we could, because this is not particularly nice as a double bottom at the moment, and there's no obvious sign that we're forming a head and shoulders. In terms of cocoa, we've been seeing a decent rally. I'm wondering if that's come to an end. Not that I'm expecting this to go an awful lot lower. It's also already come down a huge amount from these very, very strange 2024 highs, which were, far, far out of anything I'd seen on cocoa before. But I am wondering if we're going to return to the low to test that soon. In terms of the daily chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed and supporting that. On lumber, obviously, bigger picture, we've got this bearish scenario flag. This 3.5 year old flag should break down in due course with the target in the 35250 area, and we've also got a double top which is broken down in the same area. In terms of the daily chart, I've drawn in this triangle, and we're almost back at triangle resistance. I've got that shortly, but not far above at all, and we will see whether we get resistance there. In terms of cotton, we obviously broke up from the double bottom and we reached target, and we've seen a stiff pullback from there. I'm still thinking that may resolve more to the upside, but it may be that if that happens, it won't be due to fertilizer prices. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. But at the moment, they seem to have come back quite a bit, and that seems to be because more supply has been found or made. In terms of cotton on the daily chart, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed. That hasn't made target yet. We shall see. All right, looking at wheat, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed on the weekly, and I'm now wondering if that might make target. We've got a double bottom which is broken up here with a target in the 739 to 742 area. But at the moment, we've seen a pretty stiff downtrend, and I'm watching to see whether this support level at 56750 would happen. That's also a potential head and shoulder neckline, of course. In terms of wheat, the RSI 14 sell signal on the daily has made the possible near miss target already. We'll see. That 56750 has a shot at holding, I think. In terms of corn, no divergence here on the bigger picture chart, and we've got a lovely double bottom here, which still hasn't broken up, but obviously has been heading further away from breaking up last week. In terms of the daily chart, no current positive divergence. Could this be a double top breaking down? Potentially, yes. I haven't marked it in, but I am wondering about it. In terms of soybeans, we've got a possible IHS forming here, and this is still a possible IHS forming here. We're now at pretty much the ideal right shoulder low, where the ideal right shoulder low would be. So I'm watching with interest to see if this is going to turn back up. In terms of the daily chart, no current divergence. All right, let's have a quick look at crypto. Now, crypto, I've been talking for months and months and months and months, obviously, about the bear flags forming here, and they all made target last week. This was the Bitcoin one, had a target at 60.1. It's delivered it. Possible double bottom here, but I am wondering regardless about a possible rally here. But we did have a 60-minute buy signal fix, and that's now made target. In terms of Solana, we had a nice looking flag, and that has broken down and made the target at 67.65. Could see a rally from here. Bigger picture, I don't think the bear market is finished, and I think here I've sort of penciled in a target in the 40 area ultimately. Only penciled in, but for good technical reasons. Here, I'm wondering about a target at this big support level here, in the sort of the 49 to 49.50 area. So we will see whether we get that. But I think for me, that would be the obvious target on a move down. I don't think this is done to the downside yet. And while this is a big support here at 200 week moving average, it tends to get broken in bear markets at the lows. Not by a huge amount, but by some. That's one of the reasons I've got 48 as the target. In terms of Ethereum, Ethereum, we had a nice flag. That's also made target. And we've got lower lows. We had hourly buy signals on all of these that made targets. In terms of where this might head, we've broken down below this support here. I'm keeping an open mind. So this was the last main bear market low here at 107.440. This is getting worryingly close to that. We will see how that goes. But I am thinking that Ethereum is falling out of favor, really. We'll see. All right. In that case, I think it's a wrap. Everyone take care. I'll catch you guys again on Wednesday. All right. Cheers.